Can you hear me? Is it okay? Good. Well, I probably won't be dancing around with the microphone, but we'll see. Maybe things will come. So again, thank you very much for that introduction, and I am indeed honored to be here. And thank you very much for the invitation to discuss this important topic with you. And you know, I've gotten the question several times these past few days in Warsaw, oh, is this your first time to Poland? And I'm happy to say, no, it is not. And in fact, my first time in Poland was on my American University's junior year abroad program in 1987. Now, for those of you who remember that period, it was difficult for us Americans interested in this part of Europe to come to these countries. So in fact, I was studying in Vienna and came to Poland as a 20-year-old student. So thus, as you can see, I have a very fond place in my heart for Poland and keep coming back again and again and again. So speaking about this topic to you today is both professional and personally important to me. So, even though I just said those nice things about Poland, now I have to tell you my presentation is the one which is not about Poland. In fact, I won't be speaking too much about Poland, but because I was asked by the organizers to address the topic of how can we attract more Americans to Poland, of course. So I'm going to talk about that in sort of a larger context about Poland in the regional and global order, and also I want to share with you some let's say, macro-level features that I would like you to know as takeaways about American higher ed and cooperating with American higher ed. So, as you see by the title, I will be also talking a little bit more about the neighbors, and you might even say the competition as well. So I would like to first, again, share with you some of the larger context that you need to know about cooperating with the US, including some things which can help you increase American mobility of students and scholars and researchers coming here to Poland. And then finally, I've been asked to share some examples from other countries, so we'll have some comparison. So, okay, first of all, now, the context. You know, if as professionals in international education, when we're making decisions on behalf of our institution, for example, where do we allocate our precious human resources, our funding limitations, our time, right? How many extra hours do we work already to promote academic exchange and programs for our students and researchers? So I believe what we, as international education professionals, we all need to really get to know the data sources and how to use them better. So, why data? Well, as I said, we really should have data-driven internationalization decision-making at our institutions. And whether, for example, if you're an international officer, I'm sure you're called upon many times to provide data about incoming students, about outgoing students, about researchers, et cetera, to your university leadership. And you do this in your own institutional context. But I want you to be able to do this also at wider levels, at national, regional, and global levels. So I'll share some of that with you as well. This is important so you can really understand what is happening around the globe of internationally mobile students. We have 5 million students studying in other countries around the globe, outside of their borders. And that figure is projected only to grow. So we really need to understand what's happening out there in the world. Also, if you do take a look at the data, you can see about different or new avenues of cooperation and collaboration with other institutions, with other countries, how institutions such as NAVA and the Ministry of Education, the Polish Embassy in Washington can assist you. So let's take a look at some of this data. Now, again, I'm taking a look, as you saw in my initial slide, at the so-called Visegrad 4 countries, Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary. I'll share with you some comparative data. And why these 4 countries? Well, of course, we know about the, let's say, the diplomatic alignment of those Visegrad 4 countries within the European Union, but also, you know, they are similar in terms of those other 3 countries are somewhat similar to Poland in terms of their post-1989 trajectory, their political, economic, educational, demographic situation. So there are some reasons to take a look at these 4 countries together. I didn't, for example, include Germany, because if we're looking at Germany and German academia and what German universities and the German government do, I think that's completely, or not completely, but quite a different story. So let's talk about these 4 Central European countries. So back to the data. There are 2 important sources of data. There are the UNESCO statistics. The UNESCO Institute for Statistics captures data globally and of the global flow of tertiary level students, of university level students. And this is reported by governments to UNESCO, to their statistics office. UNESCO is based in Paris, and it's a UN agency, of course. And they have, they put this on a really great website. So I've listed the link here, and I encourage you to check it out. It's graphically, it's very nice. It's you can just click on a country, and it shows you the flows in and out of that country and gives you a lot of good statistics and data. Now, unfortunately, the last time they updated this data was for the academic year 2016. So it's a little bit old. They are collecting the new round. The data was just submitted by governments in, a few weeks ago, in fact, for last academic year. So the UNESCO, this data will be updated on their website in September. So you can really see, again, I'm showing you 2016. We will now see 2018 data later this year. So, okay, now, I want to look at the UNESCO statistics first, and then take a look at the American statistics, which is as the aforementioned Open Doors report, funded by the US State Department and administered by the Institute of International Education in New York. And I'm showing you 2 different data sources also to show you how you need to interpret the data and what it means for your decisions, again, specifically to attract American students to Poland. Okay, now I'm going to show you numbers and charts. Sorry, but that's what data is all about. So this is the UNESCO data about incoming student mobility into those 4 countries, yeah? And it's broken down here by the world areas and the total. Well, let's take a look at North America, and then in parentheses I have the US statistics as well. Well, so in 2016, according to the UNESCO data, Poland hosted 1,069 students from North America, 677 from the US. If you look at the neighbors, the Czech Republic, only 238. Hungary, 603, and Slovakia, only 28. Out of these totals of foreign students in tertiary enrollment. This here shows the percentage of foreign students as part of the tertiary enrollment of the country. So Poland, you know, even though it has the highest number of international students, looks to be quite low in terms of its enrollment, right? Whereas, say, the Czech Republic has a higher percentage, et cetera. So, you know, this is something which, again, you need to look at the data. one thing which is important to note when we look at Europe, of course, this does include the Erasmus students, right? So that's a consideration to look at the data. But we're focusing on the US. So if we take this as true, 677 Americans in Poland this year, and remember this number as well, this 238 in the Czech Republic. It will be significant later. All right, so moving on. This is expressing the same amount in percentages of this incoming student mobility. And again, you see, thanks to Erasmus, the strength of European students coming to these countries. And you see, without any major programs such as Erasmus or large funding mechanisms, the numbers from North America and the US are really quite low in terms of the overall percentages. I've taken a look here at this. How many non-Europeans are in these countries? Yeah? So if you total all of the non-Europeans, Poland has had more than 18%, the Czech Republic here, and Hungary, look at that. You would not expect that Hungary would host, of the international students in Hungary, that they would host 39% of them would be non-Erasmus, non-Europeans. Why? Well, again, this is where we need to put together the data and our, let's say, market intelligence. And the Hungarian government has been investing in promoting the country abroad and its higher education over the past, let's say, 5 years. They have the Stipendicum Hungaricum, which offers a lot and generous scholarships for international students. You see Asia, Africa, so from the developing world to come to Hungary and study. And they have also their equivalent of NAVA, the Tempest Public Foundation, has been very active in doing this, this kind of, let's say, national programs, international promotion of Hungary, and also support and training to Hungarian universities. Yeah. So this is the backstory that this data tells us, right? And again, this is important for us when we are making our decisions about how to promote Poland, promote Polish academia internationally, and specifically for us, attract American students. Now, let me just show you one last, all right. Sorry, this is the same thing as before. Let me move on to the IIE Open Doors data. So the Institute of International Education is the largest and oldest not-for-profit in the US dealing with, as it says, international education, student mobility, exchanges. It administers the Fulbright program in the United States on behalf of the US State Department, Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. You know, the American system of higher education, as you know, of education in general, is much more decentralized. There's less control from our federal government. And in fact, it's characterized by the, let's say, we call it the public-private partnership. So IIE is in fact a private, not-for-profit, non-governmental organization, yeah? But they function in many ways as, let's say, the national academic agency of the US. There's no such thing in the US. You know, that's a European concept. But IIE is somewhat similar to that. In addition to running all of these wonderful exchange programs, such as Fulbright, they also do a lot of research on higher education, international education, and mobility. And they've been publishing the Open Doors report since 1948. In fact, and with a grant from the US State Department since 1972, I believe it is. And the data, as you'll see in a moment, is different from the UNESCO data. And again, this is the American point of view, and I want you to understand the American mindset. So, what matters for American institutions when they want to know international student mobility? Number one, how many international students are coming to America? Yes, great. kind of a similar thing to what we just looked at with UNESCO, but in terms of American study abroad. Yeah, American universities have this concept of study abroad, and that it is something additional for their own students. And in fact, the definition by IIE, as it is, I would say, in the American university's mindset, is that they are an American university's own students who study abroad for credit from their home university. So it counts for their degree back in the United States. Whatever they do abroad, it should count towards achieving their degree. So, you know, translating that to, let's say, Erasmus program, that's really what we call credit mobility, yeah? Mobility abroad to receive credits and carry them back home to their home institution. So, when we look at the open doors number, you have to keep that American perspective in mind. By the way, their data collection, just so you know the methodology, also interesting. Here, the data is collected from around 3,000 US universities. IIE sends a survey to the international offices of every American university. And you know, we have somewhere around 4,800 accredited institutions. And the universities answer, and they get a pretty good response rate, over 3,000. They do have to then crunch the numbers and extrapolate them to get the high level, you know, metadata out of that. But you can imagine the amount of work that the IIE research team puts into this, right? So, okay, now I want to take a look and want to show you some of the IIE open doors data. I used 2016 because I want to compare it to those UNESCO statistics. And in terms of study abroad, Poland hosted 789 Americans for credit from their American university in 2016. Well, if you look at the percentage, that doesn't look so good, but I don't want you to be discouraged by that. So in 2016, of all of the Americans in Europe, there were 177,000 Americans in Europe that year. So only less than 0.5% came to Poland. But again, do not be discouraged, because look at this bottom note. 75% of US study abroad students in Europe study in the top 5 countries. So my colleague Juanita Villarena Alvarez will talk about this later, and if you were here last night, she mentioned how Poland should be the new France, right? So this is what she's referring to. But again, this data, you know, I'll point this out later, but do you remember in the slide before how, well, the Polish number was 638, and this is 789. Those are kind of similar. The Czech number was 238. And where did these 4,600 students come from? Yeah, in the Czech Republic. Yeah. So here I put the two of them together, side by side, Open Doors and the UNESCO. So I shouldn't really combine them here in the total. But if you think about the American definition is Americans coming to Poland for a short time. The UNESCO definition is Americans enrolled directly in Polish institutions. That could be degree, it could be short-term, it could be summer programs, and in fact, some of these students are in fact captured in this number, right? Because if an American student comes to Poland for a credit-bearing summer school, they will show up here, but they will also show up here. So it's kind of false for me to total them together because we're double counting some of these people. But again, I wanted to show you these numbers, UNESCO, compared to the American Open Doors numbers, and especially, again, look at that Czech number. So we see Americans do not directly enroll at Czech universities. The Czech universities don't really get much benefit from all these Americans. These Americans are going to Prague because Prague is a lovely city and it has become famous as to quote Juanita again, it's, you know, France, or you could also substitute Prague, because it's so popular among American undergraduate study abroad students. But they go there in their American study abroad programs, let's say in a certain American bubble. These are called bubble programs sometimes because often they will be led by their American professors. They will go there. They might not ever even see a Czech university, a Prague university. But they're having this academic experience and they get credit for it back home at their American university. Yeah. So this is I went through all of this data to point out to you that, again, when you're making institutional decisions about how to invest your time and money and staff, do take into account the data, but again, make sure you know what is really behind the data. And if you're from a Polish university, and again, where our theme is attract American students to come here, well, what you have to think about, what kind of students do you want? Do you want these kinds of students, yeah, directly enrolled in your institution, interacting with your faculty, your academics, your researchers, your Polish students? Or do you want this kind here, which, you know, might be a little bit more superficial? I'm not speaking against that, in fact. You know, American study abroad is quite important. Łukasz Wojdyga mentioned this IIE summit on study abroad, and they have a great program, Generation Study Abroad. And the goal is to have 500,000 Americans studying outside of the US by 2020, I think is the goal. That's fantastic. We need that. We want that for our country, for our academic system, for our young people to be globally aware and in the future. Yeah, it's good if you do these, or if you can assist or you can host, you can work with your American partners to help them bring American students led by their faculty, for example, but sitting in your institution, learning, being taught by your professors, meeting your Polish students. That's great. You know, that indeed might fall under this category, but that still is very much value added for you and for them, right? And just think about that when you're making your institutional decisions. Do you want to do that, or do you want Americans direct enrolled for degree or non-degree programs? The answer might be yes to both, in fact. I would argue that you might want to pursue both strategies when you're looking at cooperation with the U.S. And now I think I'll share some important points about that and how you can do that. And I think I don't want to talk too much about that because my colleague will be doing so next. And also in the afternoon, our sessions will take a look at some of these specific modalities on how you can do that. But let me get into some of these factors first. So, you know, these are a couple of key issues which I think really impact mobility to Poland from America. And as I said before, they're a little bit more macro level as well. One, you know about accreditation, right? And how that's very important in the US because I don't have time to go into it. In fact, I was here in, was that 2015? Hosted by the U.S. Embassy and gave a workshop on U.S. accreditation in particular. And I hear it's still maybe on YouTube somewhere. So if you want to know more about accreditation, I can tell you more later. But just very basically, U.S. accreditation is our quality assurance system. This is how we guarantee the university is providing an education that graduate students and graduates know that they're getting a good education, that their degree is recognized, that they can transfer credits from abroad or they move around from university to university. And the last point is important, that they can access U.S. federal financial aid. As you know, university education is quite expensive in the U.S. And the majority of American students need to access loans. And these loans, some of them come from the US federal government or subsidized, guaranteed by the government, let's say. They come from banks, but they're guaranteed by the government. And accreditation is important for students to receive loans to go to an institution. Again, I don't want to make this a big lecture about accreditation, but also note that in the American system, it's not the US federal government that is accrediting American universities, right? It's actually done, again, this private-public partnership. It's through a peer review process. The universities belong to regional accreditation councils, and in fact, they are reviewing and accrediting each other. So it's a university-to-university relationship, not a government-to-university relationship. However, there's something I want you to know. That last point, this regional accreditation is the main level, this peer review process. There is also programmatic accreditation. So programmatic accreditation is a specific department, degree, curricula of the larger university can receive programmatic accreditation. And these are often in specific fields, professional fields. I have some of them listed here. You see culinary, occupational therapy, veterinary studies, interior design, teacher education. Here as well, engineering, business as well, AACSB, etc. So there are many of these different programmatic accreditations, and in fact, even though these are American-based and primarily for American institutions, foreign institutions can also apply for this programmatic accreditation for their specific program. And in the case of Polish universities, you know, naturally we think about medical schools, we think, or health studies, nursing. We think about business schools as well, MBA programs, law programs, these professional areas. So again, do you need US accreditation to attract American students to Poland? Well, yes and no. No, you don't need the regional accreditation. That's what American universities need to do to be fully accredited in America. That's the really big one. So you don't need to worry about that. Foreign universities can go for American regional registration, but it's more of a headache than you need. However, this programmatic accreditation, you might want to indeed consider that, because that can lead to attracting American students. It can lead to easier university partnerships, because a potential American partner university will see that you are also part of AACSB. Yeah, and so they know that the standard of your business education is the same as theirs already. Easy, automatically we can partner with this Polish university. So programmatic accreditation is something. You know, the medical accreditation is something a little bit different. And there's this National Committee on Foreign Medical Education and Accreditation. And they've done this at a national level. So for these countries, at least Poland, the Czech Republic, and Hungary, the National Committee in the US recognizes Polish medical schools accreditation from Poland as being comparable. So that's good news about this accreditation. That's kind of a problem solved. Now, there's another option as well, which is sort of, I would put it not at this accreditation level, but at a lower level, micro level, but one which is actually important for you if you want American students to direct enroll. The US Department of Education, which does very little in terms of international education. However, remember I mentioned that how US accreditation is important for student loans and guaranteeing that Americans can get federal financial aid from it. So the US Department of Education has a program whereby international HEIs can apply to be registered. And this is called Foreign School Direct Loan Registration. And what it means is that American students can come to your university and they can use their American federal loans here in Poland. That is really important. This is, as I said, it's kind of a minor detail, but it's so important because American students graduate with tens of thousands of dollars of student loan debt, and even from their bachelor's degrees. And if they're going abroad, if they're choosing a master's program, a PhD program, if, let's say they happen to decide on Poland, fantastic. But if they cannot have their student loans deferred, meaning, you know, the loans wait until they graduate their next program, they couldn't come here. They would have to come here, pay for the Polish university to live in Poland, and then pay their American student loans back home. Yeah, even NAVA couldn't give them a scholarship to help cover their loans, right? Their American loans, it's so much. So this is, I think, a very good option for non-American universities wanting to attract American students. As of last academic year, there were 755 non-American universities who are in this foreign school direct loan registered. Now, the majority of those, of course, are in countries that already are successful at attracting American degree students. Guess, the UK, Canada, Ireland, Australia, Anglophone countries. However, Germany, almost all German universities are registered in this. Also, a significant number of Dutch universities and Swedish universities. Who are these people? These are those universities, you know, the Dutch and the Swedes who have been internationalized for 25 years and have all of those degree programs in English, right? So they're already set up to do this, to attract the Americans. Okay, this, I won't go through it. These are just the requirements, but if your university wants to sign up for this, you have to be accredited. You also have to come up with or follow the regulations for administering American loans. You have to apply. It takes a long time. Yeah, but I think we'll share these slides with everyone. Yes, so you'll have this. This is the basic outline of how to do it. It's not impossible. I've helped universities to do this. So, now, correct me if I'm wrong, and if I miss your university here, but according to the U.S. Department of Education database of those 755 foreign institutions, here are the Polish universities who have this or had this last academic year. No surprise, it's the medical universities. Has anyone done this and I don't have you on the list from any other Polish university? Yes? And the University of Warsaw? Medical. The medical. Okay, good. Thank you very much. I think we should tell them that you're not on that list on their database. Yeah? And another one?
From Łódź.
Łódź. Okay, good. Well, then definitely I think we need to get in touch with these people at the Department of Education. Yes. So let's talk during the break. Again, since I did want to give you some other examples from neighboring countries, thinking about if you're attracting American students, and we know they might go to some other neighbor like the Czech Republic, here are the Czech universities which have done this. And again, you look at several of them are indeed their medical schools. And the Hungarian universities as well, fewer of those, but Central European University, which is also accredited as a U.S. institution now too. So, okay, so let me move on. I want to just mention a second important factor, which has come up time and time again, but I wanted to to stress that what I see, I've been working with transatlantic exchanges and relationships for my whole career. So I was very glad to hear Professor Konarszewski and Grażyna Żebrowska talk about what. Dziękuję. What you're doing and the really amazing and wonderful and important scientific cooperation that's going on, because, as I said, having been in this realm for 25 years, I really believe that if we're talking about strengthening transatlantic educational relationships between Poland and the US, we must do it through scientific and R&D cooperation. Let's face it, Poland, Europe, the US, we don't have 1 billion people like China. We don't have so many students like China or India or these other huge sending countries. You know, a large part of those 5 million students going abroad do come from these large population Asian countries. Our countries are small. Even I would put America and Poland together in that if we compare our populations to China's, right? So, but the level of our universities, our academic standards, and our science and research is so high that I think that's where we need to cooperate more. So I'm so glad to see that you're actively doing this. And, you know, why might you want to really focus on scientific collaboration? Well, obviously, this benefits your institution, your researchers, your research institutes and laboratories. It helps the American ones as well. It fuels these new contacts, especially at these important doctoral and postdoctoral levels. Again, the future leaders in the world of research in certain areas. That's a place where you want to be cooperating with American institutions. And then, of course, you know, in Poland, there are generous sources, as we heard about, especially from the European programs, from Polish government programs, but also you can tap into some American funding, directly or more indirectly. But we know that the U.S. Funding, as we heard in R&D, is so high, and indeed some of it you can, I don't want to say take advantage of, but tap into with American partners. So, also, if you cooperate at this level, there are other soft benefits. For example, university rankings, citations, publication citations, reputation, name recognition, and so on. And as I said, the U.S. federal government is one of the main areas that provides research grants for universities. And about 30% of the federal government money for research does go to universities, American universities. So American universities really get, overall they get around a little more than 60% of their R&D funding for American universities comes from the federal government. But the bottom point I also to note is that in most cases, if you want to tap into this, you have to work with an American university partner, usually as a sub-grantee, a subcontractor, or somehow the American university is the main grantee from the U.S. government. And for activities that take place with their partner university abroad, it all flows through them. Here are the just a list of all of the different U.S. federal agencies which have international collaboration grants. And some of them, let's see, the National Institutes of Health, the National Science Foundation, those are two of the main ones. And again, we're talking about science, we're talking about medicine, and those are the areas that the U.S. government is keen to have Americans cooperate with the rest of the world on. So there are opportunities, and how you do this is really what you need to do is, identify your own strengths within your own institution, find out who at your university is doing what already, with whom in America, devise a strategy, make sure that, so for you to approach your American partner, existing or new partner, and again, having worked with Central European universities for a long time, I know that there are issues around sufficient staff, sufficient time, the right communications with the Americans, but also internally within the, let's say, your own institutional systems. So you have to have a good plan and be proactive and just keep at it. Is my recommendation for advancing this kind of institution-to-institution scientific cooperation with the U.S. And lastly, you see, approach your American partner in an organized way. American universities, as you probably know from your own experience, are pretty organized. They have to be in order to get these kinds of grants and funding. So, again, something that you can do about this, then think about the financial aspects behind it, and provide what you promise. You don't want to disappoint a partner, especially where there's money involved. Yeah. So that last point, this is with European grants, with Polish government grants, with American government grants. It's the same. There are very specific and strict reporting requirements. You just have to follow them. Okay. Now I just have a couple more minutes. So I want to go quickly through some examples from other Central European countries, just so you know what, let's say, the neighbors or the competition are doing. Some of these themes that I'm going to talk about, we will talk about the rest of the day, and also we've heard about and you're already doing here in Poland. So a lot of this is not necessarily new news, but this is more of just FYI. NAWA is a wonderful institution, and there are similar institutions in the other neighboring countries. So I'm calling them sister agencies. So there's again, these are the national agencies. Usually they were founded to run the Erasmus program. So they do the Erasmus funding. They also now promote the country abroad. They do government scholarships, etc. So very, very similar. And you can take a look if you're curious at the websites of, and as you see, study in the Czech Republic, study in Hungary. Yeah, the study in Slovakia is not so active, but their SAIA runs it as well. In fact, just go on the SAIA website has it. So I also mention these because if you are interested in cooperation with these countries, they do have a lot of programs and bilateral cooperation with Poland, with Polish institutions as well. CPAS among them. These organizations all run the CPAS program, but others. Okay, let me just go through a couple more examples before I finish. Again, I mentioned the importance of scientific collaboration. Palacký University in Olomouc. It's one of the top Czech universities. And what they've done to work with the U.S. is, again, they identified their existing collaborations among their research laboratories and their faculties of science and medicine. They also had to really allocate staff time, project managers to work on these proposals. Then they went to Washington and they held meetings with these federal agencies, including with the assistance of the Czech embassy in Washington. There is a Czech science attaché as well in D.C. And then they approached their different U.S. partners, and some of the U.S. said, "Yeah, sure, let's include you guys in on one of our proposals to the NIH or the NSF." Some said yes, some said no. So you have to just develop the relationship and keep at it. Palacký University also is a good example of developing summer schools. They have 18 of them now. They are open to Americans. The U.S. students are one of their top targets. And in fact, these students would probably show up under the open doors numbers, because they would be granted ECTS credits by the university. However, they probably wouldn't show up under those UNESCO numbers because, well, the summer schools students are not always directly enrolled, and if they're there for a short time, they don't even show up in the university's incoming student mobility statistics. But again, they're focusing on the US, working with American partners to bring cohorts of students, and marketing to individual American students. A lot of this is very basic, word of mouth, social media. They don't invest a lot of money, but they're successful at attracting Americans to their summer schools. Okay. Again, national level promotion, talking a little similar to what NAVA does. These organizations also have a very active promotion at NAFSA. The NAFSA conference is the largest conference for U.S. higher education professionals. So it's in Washington this year, the last week of May, and I hope some of you are going. It's a wonderful learning opportunity. Another thing that these countries do is they engage with their expatriates there. There is a National Czech and Slovak Heritage Museum and Library. The museum is interested in working with Czech universities to provide lifelong education programs to Czech heritage people to go back to the Czech Republic. And the Czech universities will organize special summer schools for them. Educational tourism is what it is. These organizations, as you know, help spread the word to heritage communities. Like you mentioned, is it Piazza? The Czechs and Slovaks have a joint one, this Společnost pro vědy a umění, and but even though it was founded by expats back in the 50s, it was the old exile academics, but they've really transformed it into something new. And they have, for example, the 6-minute challenge, where they invite young Czechs and Slovaks who are there in the U.S., academics, researchers, artists, performers, whatever, and they go to the Czech Center in New York and Washington, and they present their work in 6 minutes. So it's a great way, again, a younger audience, and also to expose what's happening in the country, in the home country, to an American audience. The Hungarians do the same thing. They have a educators association, so it's a bit academic, a bit cultural, a bit heritage altogether. Also, another good example of cooperation is looking at strategic partnerships. A lot of universities in Central Europe haven't quite developed enough strategic partnerships, but Semmelweis, the medical university in Budapest, has a long-standing one with Rutgers University. And as you see here, I won't read it, but they did it step by step and really built up and deepened the cooperation there. And they also used existing programs such as Erasmus Plus and Fulbright mobility. And it was exchanges both ways. You see the last one, Semmelweis created short programs for American nursing students in Budapest with Rutgers. So, let's see. I'm going to skip that and just give my conclusion briefly, not to run out of time. But again, to sum all of this up, getting back to our theme of how to attract American students to your universities and to Poland in general, again, do your research. Use that data that's out there and know what it means there. Number one. Number two, understand the unique American higher education system. And my colleague Juanita will talk about, from an inside point of view from universities, what they want and need in cooperation with you. Number three, use all of those great national agencies, embassy, promotional campaigns, the expatriate organizations in the U.S. All of these are very useful, and you should tap into all of them. And again, finally, the message is, be proactive, be out there in the world, communicate the strengths of your university, of the Polish academic system, and as Poland as a safe and welcoming destination to American and any international students. So that is my message to you. Thank you very much. Good. Well, would we have time for one or two questions?
Yeah, we have still 5 minutes, so if there are any questions from the hall, then feel free to ask. Or maybe any comments. Okay.
Yes, Garen Werner, Quinnipiac University, Connecticut. Christopher, just probably more of a comment than a question, but I will ask the question at the end, and therefore I will turn my comment into a question. Study abroad versus studying abroad, meaning the 1 week, 2 week sessions that American students come to the European universities versus studying like a semester or two. And that's the question part now. Don't you think that this is a kind of a natural progression? The first cohort of students will come to, let's say, Poland for the 1 week or 2 week study. And there's a totally different rationality for students to come for a week than for semester. But when they go back to their to their current country institutions, there is a chance that they will spread the word around that it's worth it, and maybe they will even consider future down the line, you know, in a second or third or fourth, or maybe in a graduate program to come study. Because I'm afraid that for a lot of American students just to take a risk and say, okay, I'm going to go to study in Poland, as good academic system as we might have, this is the anxiety level.
Right.
So don't you think that this is maybe a good thing? Let them come first in the cohorts, thousands of them, to Poland for a 1 week, like they go to Ireland, to Dublin, you know, and then out of that, maybe the statistics will show 2 or 3% maybe will come back for a longer term. Thank you. Yeah. That was the question, by the way. If there's a question mark at the end.
No, the question and my answer is yes. As I said, doing both are great. You know, for those of you who have dealt with American students or the universities, you know that they do need a lot of special attention and special care, and they're worried about strange things such as safety. I mean, Poland is one of the safest countries we can think of to come to, but forgive them, they don't know that back in the US. Yeah, they might have other images or they just don't know. So if they do come with their American faculty member, for a short trip, ideally visiting your university, not solely in a bubble, but still it gives them the taste. And of course, the majority of them are excited and they want to come back. And then indeed, those students especially I think are worth marketing to because as I mentioned that Palacký University example with the summer school as well, who do you think is automatically on the list of mass mailings and social media for degree programs at Palacký University? Those Americans and other foreign students who were there for 2 weeks in the summer. So indeed, you're right. And I think that's a marketing challenge that each of your universities should undertake. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. One more question.
One more question.
Hello, Bogdan Szklarski, American Studies Center, Warsaw University and Collegium Civitas. Just a question about your data for the Czech Republic and Hungary. How much does it include a Central European University for Budapest? And is it included in the data or not? Mm-hmm. Because that's a huge attractant of students right. from foreign countries. And another methodological question: does the data include American university campuses in Eastern Europe? Like for instance, NYU has a campus in Prague. Mm-hmm. Are their students, because the Czech numbers are so high? Do the numbers include the American students going to American extensions in and Central European countries or not? Because you haven't even mentioned this
That
this
phenomenon, yes.
form of
Right.
attracting students, establishing very institutionalized relations to attract a campus for American
Right.
university.
The answer is, I'm not entirely sure about all of those institutions you mentioned, so the answer is both yes and no. For example, for CEU, the numbers, I believe, or they should, the Hungarian government should include them in their numbers because CEU is, and its degrees are recognized as Hungarian degrees, and it's a Hungarian institution as well. They probably wouldn't, CEU wouldn't be in the open doors numbers because it's not really an American institution. However, let's say those American universities in Prague, I'm not sure because it depends on where they grant the degree. For example, NYU in Prague, they would be included because NYU in New York would include them in their overall institutional numbers. However, there's some of the private local institutions that teach in English. They wouldn't be included in open doors, but again, like CEU, they should be included in the Czech national data if they are accredited by the Czech Ministry of Education. But specifically, I don't know. I can't guarantee my answer. As I said, it's more of a should be. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ruiz. Unfortunately, we cannot allow to ask another question because we need to move on with the schedule. So please wait with this question to the lunch break. Okay, and now I'd like to thank you, Chris, for your speech. Thank you.